Hey everybody, it's Caleb Crewy with Caleb Crewy Reports and Predicts. Today we're going to go over the UK general election, um, though we will not really go over the Northern Ireland, which did vote yesterday, but we'll go in that a separate video talking about those results and the prospects of a united Ireland. So we'll be focusing on England, Scotland, and Wales today and the changes. Last night's events were seismic. The Conservatives received their largest majority since the Margaret Thatcher in the election of 1983, and the Labour Party has had their worst number of seats since 1935, and since they've been a major party, this has been their worst election in their history. The Scottish Nationalist Party did really well. So the Conservatives are up to 364 seats. That's up 47. The Labour Party's at 203. That's down 59. The SNP is up 13, 48 seats, and the Liberal Democrats is down to 11 seats, which is down one so far. And also Plaid Cymru, which is the Welsh National Party, is at 4 seats. The Conservatives got 43.6% of the vote share. The Labour Party was at 32%, and the Liberal Democrats was 11.5% there. And you can look at the other parties here and see what the smaller parties did. Um, and before we go, well, we'll go into the individual. We'll go to look at England and how that uh, shaped out. So England is, of course, where the Conservatives really stomped at home. They picked up 48 seats in England, and so most of the seats that they ended up picking up were in England and in Wales, but they lost a lot in Scotland. But the lion's share of their seats was in England, where they got 47% of the vote, and the Labour Party got 34%, the Lib Dems at 12. And if we look over here, uh, we could see that the Liberal Democrats, their vote share in England went up 4.6%. The Conservatives went up 1.7. The Labour Party went down almost a total of 8 points. And as you can see on the map here, this North England, which we will go into that later on, was a huge, huge win for the Conservatives, and they really romped it home in there, and that's where they really picked up. This is historically known as the Red Wall. This is a Labour heartland, and for it to have gone this big for the Conservatives is surprising. That this was the Conservatives' battle strategy, but I don't think anybody really foresaw that happening, or to the degree it did at least. Scotland is important. The SNP here did really well. Um, they got 48 seats. Um, so they're up 13 seats. So for them, this is good. This isn't as good as they did in 2015, but it is still really good for them. They knocked out Jo Swinson, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. She lost her seat by 150 votes in East Dunbartonshire. The Labour Party got completely wiped out, and the Conservatives lost a lot of seats as well. So that and ends up the Labour on vote share. The S&P gained 8 points. The Labour was down 8.5. So you could say it looks like that's a shift. The Conservatives were also down 3.5. The Lib Dems were actually up, and they did take the seat of Fife Northeast. So they did gain a seat, but they also lost a seat that happened to be the seat of their leader. Um, and so the SNP is up 13 seats in Scotland. The Conservatives are down 7. The Lib Dems didn't change, and Labour is down 6. So then we'll go over to Wales. This is also a huge night. Labour won Wales last time by about 15 percentage points. Well, they're down 6 seats. They're 22 seats. The Conservatives are up at 14, and Plaid Cymru stayed the same at 4 seats. But what's important here is the vote share, which is the Conservatives only lost by about 4 to 5 points in Wales. Now, a lot of the polling was indicating this, but what's interesting about this is that's up a ton If we look down here, Labour is down at 8 points total. The Brexit Party, of course, is up a lot, but the Conservatives as well. So this is a really good night for the Conservatives. As we have been saying, um, they had just a phenomenal result, and really what helped the Conservatives with this result was Brexit. I was watching one of the live streams on this, and they said the ABCs, and I agree with this. Austerity, which is cutting public services. This is what conservatives are historically known for. Boris Johnson was able to neutralize that, the attacks on that. So that's the A, is they neutralized austerity. The B is Brexit, and they did really well on saying we're going to get Brexit done, we're going to get it over with, and they really hit Brexit hard. It was the Brexit election, that's for sure. And C is Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn was very controversial, was not well liked. Some people saw that he was going way too far to the left. He had a very radical manifesto, as well as plagued by uh, allegations of anti-Semitism that he was never really able to shake or even answer for. He could never apologize for. He also, his national security, he had ties to, it looked like he was sympathetic to terrorist organizations. He also said he would never use the Trident nuclear system or a nuclear weapon. So he really looked, it was very controversial. And for Corbyn, it was a nightmare. We'll get into Labor, the future, but what now we're looking at is the changes in some of the seats. And as you see, the S&P here in Scotland had a lot of pickups there, and they did really well. And then if you look over here, it looks pretty blue in all the pickups. Now there is a pickup in Putney, which is a very Remain area in London. And that was the only place that Labour was able to pick up. And real quick, we're going to switch back and before we go over the changes and look at all that blue. If you look that the Labour votes are mainly, this is London, this is Birmingham here, this is around Liverpool, the right up here is Newcastle, it's various city. This is around Cardiff and Wales. And so what this tells us is that the Labour has really been losing um, out in their heartland in the north of England, but they're only really winning in industrial centers for the most part. They're very concentrated among city and large population areas, and you cannot in the United Kingdom win elections like that. So they're in a world of hurt. If you look, what we're going to look at to really show you the crumbling of that red wall that they were talking about. Boris Johnson, the Conservatives, they didn't crumble this wall. They took a wrecking ball to it. And so some of the ones we're going to go over that really were big is Sedgefield, which we told you to watch out for. Um, that was a big win. And we're also look at Blythe Valley and Redcar. As Boris Johnson said, it's no longer a red car, it's blue car. But let's first look at Sedgefield. Now, this is a really big win for the Conservatives. This is a seat you would never think that would have went Conservative, and it did. Uh, so the Conservatives ended up getting 47% of the votes in this seat. The Labour was at 36. And the Brexit Party was at 8, which was really good. The Labour lost 17 points here. This is what happened all across the north for Labour last night. They were losing by generally around 15 to 18% of the vote that they were falling in some of the seats that they did better in or held on to. They only lost 10 points, but still all of the north of England pretty much followed this pattern. And if we go up here and we look uh, at the Conservatives, again gaining 8.4 percentage here in Sedgefield. This was a major win for them. And now what we're going to go to is Blythe Valley. Now, Sedgefield was something we said, well, if they picked up, it would be a good night. Walsall South was kind of the blowout seat. Now, it did not go for the Conservatives, but Blythe Valley is one that was a blowout indicator that nobody really had on their radar. It was 115 on the Conservative target list, so this was not a seat that they thought that they could win. Labor is down 15 points in Blythe Valley. The Conservatives are up 5, and the Brexit Party got 8% of the vote. So this was a really monumental seat right here, and this really um, helped the Conservatives a lot. Now we're going to go over to Redcar, which is another seat here, and that the Conservatives, they just mopped up in Redcar. And they gained 12 points, almost 13 points in Redcar. The Brexit Party was up 7, and the Labour Party was down 18. And so this was just one of those seats that we've been talking about. This is in that red wall, and it is now probably the blue wall. It has crumbled. Um, and so this was a really good night for Boris Johnson and the Conservatives. But we're going to look at a couple seats real quick, and these are some seats that if if the if if the Labor Party ever looks to to build a government, they're going to have to win. And we're going to look at some of these seats that in the future, um, and in the past have been indicative of bellwether seats or seats that usually will tell you what's going on, and they weren't even close. One of those is Nuneaton. Now, this is a seat that used to be a marginal or a swing seat, but not tonight. In Nuneaton, it wasn't even close. The Conservatives got 60% of the vote. They were up 9 points. The Labour Party was down 9. And another one that we'll go over real quick, which has not necessarily been a battleground in a while, but is Swindon. Either Swindon, but we'll go to Swindon North in particular. This was another, huge win for the Conservatives. They're up. They were up to almost 60%, up 5.5 points. So these are some seats here that if the Labor was ever going to form a government, that they would need to, and they're not win, and they're not even remotely competitive. As you would see, they would need to be around here. They would need to be a lot more competitive, and they are not. Obviously, they'd have to do better in the north and in Wales. It's been a wipeout there. It'll be interesting to see if Boris Johnson and the Conservatives can hold on to those seats. Um, Later, I will probably do a video on the future of the Labour Party. We don't really know what's going to happen. We know that Jeremy Corbyn, in his concession speech, said that he will not lead them in a future election, but that he's not stepping down yet. It's for a period of reflection, which probably means that he wants somebody like him to be a successor. From the Corbyn faction of the Labour Party, what they call the Corbynistas, Rebecca Long Bailey is probably the favorite there, and probably who he will end up pushing pretty strongly. But then when you turn into the Tony Blair wing of the Labour Party, the more moderate wing, it looks like either Emily Thornberry or Sir Keir Starmer will lead them there, or maybe Jess Phillips. But it looks like Keir Starmer and Rebecca Long Bailey are the favorites right now. They both are ideologically opposed. Of course, Rebecca Long Bailey is like the Corbyn style. And so if you listen to Jeremy Corbyn and a lot of the people from that wing of the Labour Party last night, they're in complete denial. They say this is a Brexit election. and that their manifesto and their ideas had nothing to do with it. Corbyn had nothing to do with it. It was just Brexit, which is obviously crazy. That is just not true, but that is how they're viewing it, because to have this big of a wipeout and to have this movement to the left and this to result in such big of a wipeout, I don't think they can really process that. But I will be doing a video on where they need to win um, in the future if Labor is ever going to get back close to the government. They're not even close to that right now. These last two elections, we were talking about either a conservative majority or a hung parliament. Labor is nowhere near close or winning in the areas they would need to win in order to form a government. So that's way out there. And so the question now is, can the conservatives hold these seats they won? And then the next question is, what's going to look like in Scotland with Scottish independence? So thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you could hit like and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. And I will continue to be putting out content about elections across the world. Thank you so much.